Give Sam a chance to get back. Okay, so how we're going to conduct the second half of this public comment section is we are going to just hear from community members. We're not going to have Dr. Rosenbaum respond just in the interest of time. What we will do is allow Dr. Rosenbaum to type up any notes or any kind of responses that we'll provide publicly. We're going to have a 15-minute period for this, and we will end it at 7:45. We have 2 microphones. If you just want to line up and then state your name and the organization you're with, and then give your comments. Keep your comments related to this. If your comment is not about the settlement agreement, we're just going to cut it off, or the COCO report, excuse me. Yeah, so we're going to open it up right here.
Hi, I'm Mike Schumann. I'm with Portland Cop Watch.
Hang on one second. Where's Dr. I want, he's got to be here for any comments, so.
Okay.
Give us a second. We're Dr. Rosenbaum. Yes. Oh, there he is.
He went home.
Just give us half a second for him to get settled. All right. So just so you know, just to reiterate, we're having a 15-minute comment process. We're going to ask that Dr. Rosenbaum that you not respond just in the interest of time so we can get as many community members through. And then any notes or feedback you want to give, you can type those up, and then we can put them up on the pccep website for folks to respond to that. And we'll make sure to record names too, just for that purpose. So if you could say your name, any organization.
My name's Mike Schumann. I'm with Portland Cop Watch. And I just want to give a little perspective to this whole thing. 6, 7, 8, 5 years ago, and continuing, the city had a problem with the Portland Police Department. They were using excessive force, a lot of it on mentally ill people. And it was so bad that the federal government came in and they sued the city to try and get it straightened out. And the city, in its wisdom, hired the esteemed Dr. Rosenbaum to come in and see if we can correct the problem. And this is a quote for today: outcomes are not the main focus of the settlement agreement. What are you doing here if outcomes are not the main focus of the settlement agreement? Outcomes are what we wanted you to do, to change things so that it doesn't keep happening. And my second and other comment is, in the last 2 years, I don't think any police officers in the last several years were disciplined for excessive force. And so there's a whole component of this thing which says that if a police officer is continually or start using force that they shouldn't be using, that somebody disciplines them. The main problem in Portland is it doesn't happen. It's like the elephant in the room. And those are the only 2 things I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you for those comments.
Hi, I'm Dan Handelman. I'm also with Portland Cop Watch, and I could spend 15 minutes talking about this, but I'll do as quickly as I can, the comments that I do have. I appreciated that the question was raised about why we still have people with mental illness dying at the hands of the police. And this is not just a statistical aberration. If you look with a larger pool of data, if you go back in time, if you look at what the OIR group published, when they were looking at stuff before the DOJ came, 55% of the people who were killed had mental health issues. Afterwards, 65% of people did. So in the last 2 years, I would say there were 3 people this year who had mental health crisis. In the last 2 years, that number is 54%. So we're back to where we were before, but it's not improving. So just looking at this as 1 or 2 incidents a year isn't doing a statistical scientific analysis, which is what we're expecting from the compliance officer. On that note, I believe that Dr. Rosenbaum said that there was no force used other than minor kinds of force against people with mental health issues, but we had at least 2 or 3 people who died this year had mental health issues. So those statistics exclude deadly force. So we are going to put out a longer statement. We already talked a little bit to folks, including the media, about concerns about the findings. I'm very glad that PCCP is thinking about asking them findings not to be complete. The IPR reaching a 94% goal, or when the goal is 100% of investigations in 180 days, that's clearly not in compliance. And there was no analysis of the fact that the reason that both internal affairs and IPR have been able to speed up their investigations is that they've gotten rid of half their investigations by giving them to supervisors and calling it supervisory investigations. And the COCL hasn't had time, because these only started a few months ago, to do an analysis of whether those are being appropriately categorized and whether it's more serious cases that used to be investigated are now being shuffled off to these supervisors. So of course it's easier to get your job done when your caseload is cut in half. The BHU Advisory Committee, which was mentioned, still doesn't hold open meetings. Yes, the settlement agreement doesn't technically say they have to have open meetings, but what we're talking about in terms of compliance and outcomes is the spirit of this agreement, not the letter of the agreement. And that is what I think we're wrestling with between what you're saying and what we're saying, right? The spirit is those meetings should have been open from day one, and they've never had an open public meeting of the BHUAC. They had a public event, but it wasn't a meeting. And the Mental Health Association asked them in March, one more time, to open meetings, and they waited till after your report came out that said, oh, they don't have to do it, we just suggest that they do it, and finally answered the Mental Health Association and said, we're not going to do it. So you greenlighted a continuation of something that goes against the idea of community engagement. And I don't know if anybody's waiting to talk. The PPB's annual reports were presented with, the first one was presented with no advance notice that we know of. The one in East County, or in East Precinct, was done with 1 day's notice. And the one at City Council happened 8 days after it was announced here at this meeting, which didn't give us time to turn people out. There were only 5 of us, including me, who testified at that meeting. If the Bureau was engaged with the community and interested in community engagement, they would have publicized it, turned people out, and actually asked City Council to hold an evening meeting so people who worked during the day could have made it. So this is just kind of the tip of the iceberg of some of the things I wanted to say. And if there's extra time, I'd like to...
Yeah, maybe we'll have you come back up. I want to make sure that we open it up to other folks. Thank you, Dan.
Hi, I'm Jan Freedman. I'm here with Disability Rights Oregon, and I just want to make the point that I think that this has been a long process, of course. So many people have been in on this long process. I think at this point, trying to wrap it up too fast and trying to say, oh, it's done because there's that output. Look, they've done this and they've done that, but we don't care about outcomes. Or outcomes aren't really the point. Let's look at the paper. But the pccep has a difficult job. They're doing community engagement. The community's not looking at specific paragraphs of the settlement agreement. As you know, this was a issue of unconstitutional use of force back in 2012, settlement agreement in 2014. pccep has only had 1 year to convene and work on community engagement. I think they're doing a great job doing their work, but this is not enough time to engender trust. We don't have trust. We don't have full engagement, not for lack of trying, but because it's only been really in the last year and quite recently that we have a community engagement plan even. So let's put it in place, let's see how it works, and let's afterwards have that extra year. Because if we're just, waltzing off now, it's just not right. It seems like a rush to the finish line, and it's not the kind of thing we can rush on. That's not fair to our citizens.
Thank you, Jan.
Alexa Simpson. I'm actually an unhoused community member. There's a couple things that I wanted to touch on. If these community surveys are being required to be sent out or initiated based off of a phone call or a text, that data is going to be skewed and erroneous. Because if over 50% of the encounters are with the unhoused community, those should be sent out via mail. Any other official public notice has to be published in the newspaper. For those that have a lack of telephony-based services or the choice to lack telephony-based services. So that data is not going to be representing what's truly happening, and these encounters are not going to be documented, and these surveys aren't representing what's really happening out there. Additionally, a major concern that I have is the lack of a cycle or rotation in regards to the officer patrol districts or regions that they patrol to prevent the development of personal relationships with the unhoused community. I've personally witnessed and been a victim of discriminatory, biased, and predatory behavior. And this is especially true during the conducted sweeps. And I was informed by an active patrol officer on duty during a sweep that the officers conducting or helping facilitate the sweeps are not shown as active or available officers on duty. And that data is not even shown to their colleagues or other officers in the field. So that leads me to believe they're operating without proper surveillance. That's a huge oversight. This is something that remains unmentioned in any documentation that I see in regards to the police conduct in our city. And some of the things that I have personally gone through and witnessed are foul. Especially very, very predatory behavior, especially with warrant sweeps. People are exposed, they're having to move their belongings. A lot of the information that's presented to the public in regards to the process when it comes to these sweeps is incorrect. If you call this one point of contact system line, it indicates we have advocates at street level who provide us with services or information on how to access said services, which are either lacking or non-existent. They state that they give us a specific time frame and date for these sweeps to be conducted. That's not true. We're given about 7 to 10 days, 2 days in some areas. There's no transparency in regards to what's considered of value or of necessity. And we're having private patrol companies determine what's of value or necessity and take our belongings then to these storage facilities that are difficult to contact or require that there's police interaction to obtain your belongings. And I feel that's actually intentional because a lot of the unhoused community has had a poor interaction with an officer. They feel scared, or put in a position where they're re-traumatized, and then their belongings are not retrieved, and they're put back in a position again where they're displaced further. The divide is just growing when it comes to having respect or a desire to work with the city or the city officials, and people feel hurt, damaged, traumatized, and lost. And if you want to see growth and you want to see people being active in their community, there needs to be respect. And I feel that there's none. That's all that I have to say at this point in time. Thank you.
Could you say your name one more time, please?
Yes, Alexis Simpson.
Thank you for sharing your lived experience. I'm going to go to Philip.
Hi, this is Philip Wolfe speaking. I'm a community member here, living in 10 years here in the city of Portland. Several things I'd like to discuss tonight one is a question about an evaluation that's occurring when the police officer has considered a community member a concern or a mental illness status. So I don't feel comfortable with police making that decision. I feel like a mental health professional should be making that decision to take somebody to maybe a drop-off center, because when a police officer in uniform with police vehicles taking people off the street anywhere will create more of a crisis. Also, in this area, many of the houseless people have been taken in, and if you recall, our Mayor Ted Wheeler for the City of Portland had established an anti-homeless laws, which actually it actually means that private business owners, private homeowners can just see people on the street and call the police for no reason, no broken law other than the fact that they're houseless. So that is a systemic problem that needs to be addressed. The tents and the street sweeping has been allowed to escalate more crisis situations. There must be a resolution to this problem. The laws that are being set now are reinforcing the problem. And so this is a situation that's just going to be increasing in severity. With all due respect, I do understand how the settlement agreement is worded and what exactly needs to be changed with it. It does need to be complied with. Now, I just encourage the pccep members to do more than what